From the very beginning, Catherine wasn't dazzled by crowns, palaces, or military parades. Her vision went far deeper. Unlike her husband, Peter, who idolized Frederick the Great and spent hours with toy soldiers, Catherine set her sights on ideas that could truly reshape Russia. She devoured the works of Enlightenment giants like Voltaire and Diderot, believing in reason, education, and the idea that a ruler's duty was to serve the people. Her letters with Voltaire lasted more than 15 years, a mix of admiration and clever defense of her absolute power. She even invited Diderot to her court, later buying his entire library, not just as a gesture of respect, but to secure his financial future. Catherine wasn't content with theory alone. Behind the palace walls, she studied legal codes, argued reforms, and drafted bold plans to modernize her vast empire. In 1767, she took a historic step by assembling the Legislative Commission to create a new legal code. At its heart was her famous nakaz, the instruction. This wasn't just another royal decree. It was a radical vision: equality before the law, an end to torture, and a reminder that rulers must govern for the common good. For 18th century Russia, it was nothing short of revolutionary. Catherine the Great was more than an idealist. She was a pragmatist. She ruled over a deeply conservative, feudal Russia, where nobles clung fiercely to their privileges. To keep their loyalty, she tightened their grip on the serfs, even as she abolished certain forms of torture, expanded secular education, and opened schools and libraries. In public, she styled herself as a philosopher queen. In private, she was a master strategist, a survivor in a ruthless world. Her reign was a balancing act, constantly weighing Enlightenment ideals against the hard realities of ruling an empire that stretched across continents. Catherine borrowed the brilliance of Europe's salons, but reshaped it to suit Russian soil. Her reforms were never reckless. They were deliberate, calculated, and always designed to secure her absolute authority. She had seized the throne with daring. She would keep it with mastery. But Catherine's ambitions stretched far beyond reform. She envisioned Russia not just as a stable empire, but as a power that would command respect and fear across Europe. If Peter the Great had opened a window to the west, Catherine sought to tear down the walls entirely. Under her rule, Russia expanded more dramatically than at any time in its history. Her wars against the Ottoman Empire in the 1760s and 1770s were about far more than land. They were battles for influence, prestige, and destiny. Catherine cast herself as the protector of Orthodox Christians under Ottoman rule and the rightful guardian of Eastern Europe. With brilliant commanders like Alexander Suvorov and Grigory Potemkin at her side, she secured Crimea, the northern Black Sea coast, and the warm water ports Russian rulers had coveted for generations. These victories didn't just redraw the map. They redefined Russia's place in Europe. To the west, Catherine wielded diplomacy as effectively as she wielded armies. Through cunning alliances and calculated opportunism, she joined Austria and Prussia in carving up the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. By 1795, Poland had vanished from the map, and Russia stood larger, stronger, and more diverse than ever before. Yet Catherine's empire was not just about conquest. She built cities, expanded trade routes, and encouraged settlement in new territories. German colonists were invited to cultivate farmland. Commerce thrived from the Baltic to the Black Sea. To her critics, this was overreach. To Catherine, it was destiny. Great rulers, she believed, were judged not only by the ideas they embraced, but by the lands they brought under their command. And if her public life was defined by imperial grandeur, her private life was equally captivating. Lovers came and went, young, charming, and rewarded with titles, estates, and fortunes. But one man stood apart, Grigory Potemkin. Brilliant, ambitious, and utterly devoted, he became her partner in both politics and passion. Together, They dreamed, schemed, and built an empire. Together, Catherine and Grigory Potemkin were unstoppable. They dreamed up military strategies, launched colonization projects, and reshaped southern Russia. Their partnership blurred the lines between romance and statecraft. Some even whispered they had secretly married. But Europe was less forgiving. Pamphlets mocked her as immoral, caricatures painted her as insatiable, and after her death, vicious rumors, most infamously the invented tale involving a horse, were spread to tarnish her memory. The obsession wasn't really about her lovers, it was about her power. In an age when women rulers were supposed to be saints or victims, Catherine refused to play the part. To her, love and pleasure were simply part of life. They never interfered with her real passion, governing. She kept her heart and her crown separate, and it was this discipline that allowed her to reign as one of the most formidable rulers of the 18th century. Catherine's ambition didn't stop at reform. She wanted Russia to be more than stable. She wanted it to dominate. If Peter the Great had opened a window to the west, Catherine tore down the walls. Under her leadership, Russia expanded further than ever before, not just defending its borders, but redrawing the map of Europe. Her clashes with the Ottoman Empire in the 1760s and 1770s were about more than land. They were about influence. Catherine styled herself as the liberator of Orthodox Christians under Muslim rule and the protector of Eastern Europe. With brilliant generals like Alexander Suvorov and her partner Potemkin at her side, she secured Crimea, the northern Black Sea coast, and the long-coveted warm-water ports that had eluded Russian rulers for centuries. These victories weren't just military, they were symbolic. Russia was no longer a distant outlier. It was a continental power. To the west, Catherine used diplomacy as skillfully as armies. Through shrewd alliances, she joined Austria and Prussia in the three partitions of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. By 1795, Poland had vanished from the map, and Russia emerged larger, richer, and more complex than ever, with millions of new subjects under her rule. Yet Catherine didn't just conquer, she built. She planted cities, opened trade routes, and invited German settlers to cultivate farmland. From the icy Baltic to the sunlit Black Sea, Russia became a mosaic empire, tied together by her will. Critics accused her of greed and imperialism. Catherine saw destiny. She believed greatness was measured not just in ideals, but in borders. To her, a ruler's true legacy was an empire strong enough to endure and feared enough to command respect. She had no desire to be remembered as a mere queen of Russia. She wanted to be the maker of an empire. Catherine's fame rested not only on her political genius and military victories, but also on her private life. She surrounded herself with a succession of young, handsome lovers, many decades her junior, some politically influential, nearly all richly rewarded with titles, estates, and pensions. When their time was up, they were dismissed with generous gifts rather than disgrace. Her most enduring companion was Grigory Potemkin, a man as brilliant and ambitious as she was. Together they plotted wars, launched colonization projects, and transformed Russia's southern frontier. Their partnership was so profound that some contemporaries believed they had secretly married. But Europe fixated on the scandal. Satirists lampooned her as lustful and unstable. After her death, enemies went further, spreading grotesque lies. Most, infamously the fabricated horse story, in a deliberate attempt to stain her legacy. Yet the truth was simpler and far more threatening. Catherine was a woman who wielded power unapologetically. At a time when female rulers were expected to be saints or victims, she refused to fit the script. She lived, loved, and ruled on her own terms, and that terrified her detractors. In reality, Catherine approached love with pragmatism. She saw pleasure as natural, not shameful, and believed that private happiness need not conflict with public duty. Many of her relationships were as political as they were personal, ensuring loyalty among the powerful men around her. When they ceased to be useful, she let them go, without rancor, without weakness. For Catherine, love was not a distraction from power. It was part of the machinery of rule. Yet her boldest challenge came not from pamphlets in Paris or whispers in Vienna, but from within her own empire. In 1773, a rough-hewn Cossack named Yemelyan Pugachev ignited the largest peasant uprising in Russian history. Claiming to be her executed husband, Peter III, miraculously returned, Pugachev promised freedom from serfdom, lower taxes, and land for the common people. To Russia's oppressed masses, truth mattered less than hope, and his message spread like wildfire. The rebellion raged across the Volga, consuming towns and fortresses. Nobles were slaughtered, and for a moment Catherine's empire trembled. This was not a foreign war that could be solved with cavalry charges and treaties. It was a revolt from within. But Catherine did not flinch. She dispatched her finest generals, and by 1774, Pugachev was captured, dragged through Moscow in an iron cage, and publicly executed. The revolt left its mark. Catherine's earlier dreams of emancipating the serfs faded into the background. To secure her throne, she bound herself more tightly to the nobility, granting them even greater power over their serfs in exchange for unwavering loyalty. Enlightenment. Ideals gave way to political survival, and Catherine proved once again that she would do whatever it took to keep her empire intact.